Imagine a man who gave the world electricity, wireless communication, radio, X-rays, and the blueprint for Wi-Fi, all before the year 1900. Now imagine that same man, 86 years old, dying completely alone in a hotel room he couldn't afford to pay for. No family at his side, no journalists outside the door, no nation mourning in the streets, just a stack of unpaid bills, and a do not disturb sign that had been hanging on his door for 3 straight days. That is how Nikola Tesla left this world. But here is the part that will keep you up at night. Within 2 hours of his body being discovered, before most of the world had even heard the news, FBI agents were already inside that room, tearing through drawers, pulling files, loading up 80 trunks full of his personal documents and research. 80 trunks. And some of those documents have never been seen by the public. Not in 1943, not in 1983, not even today. The official reason the US government still gives? They could be a threat to national security. The man has been dead for over 80 years. So what exactly did he know? And more importantly, who made sure the rest of us never found out? This is the story of Nikola Tesla. And I promise you, by the time this is over, you will never look at your electricity, your Wi-Fi, or your phone the same way again. To understand what happened to Tesla, you need to understand one pattern that runs through his entire life like a scar. Nikola Tesla was assassinated, not once, 3 times. The first assassination happened in a boardroom. The second happened when a tower was torn from the ground and sold as scrap. And the third, the quietest and most effective of all, is still happening right now, in the pages of every science textbook that forgets to mention his name. Let's go back to where it all began. Picture the world in the 1870s. After sunset, cities go dark. People carry lanterns. Candles burn in windows. The night belongs to shadows. Then in 1879, Thomas Edison changed everything. He invented the first practical electric light bulb. He built power stations. He wired up city blocks and watched them glow for the first time in human history. The world worshipped him for it. But Edison's system ran on DC current, direct current. And DC had a fatal flaw nobody wanted to talk about. It could only carry electricity 2 to 3 kilometers before it died out completely. You needed a new power station every few blocks. Expensive to build, expensive to run, and the ordinary customer paid for all of it through electricity bills so high that only businesses and the wealthy could really afford them. Edison had a monopoly, no competition, no alternative, so the world accepted it and paid up. Until 1887, when a 31-year-old Serbian immigrant walked in and blew the whole game open. His name was Nikola Tesla. Tesla had actually worked for Edison once. Brilliant, tireless, pulling 20-hour shifts to solve problems Edison's own engineers couldn't crack. Legend says Edison once promised him $50,000 to redesign his DC motors. Tesla did it. When he asked for the money, Edison laughed and told him he didn't understand American humor. Tesla walked out and never looked back. He started his own company, and within months, he introduced something that made Edison's entire empire look like a candle next to a lightning bolt. AC current, alternating current. Where DC could travel 2 or 3 kilometers, Tesla's AC could travel hundreds of kilometers without losing power. Cheaper to transmit, cheaper to distribute, and it could reach towns and villages DC could never touch. Cities started paying attention, investors started calling, and slowly, Edison's monopoly began to crack. In 1888, George Westinghouse came to Tesla with an offer: $60,000 up front, 150 shares in Westinghouse Electric, a salary of $2,000 a month, and the crown jewel, $2.50 in royalty for every single horsepower of AC electricity ever sold in America. Every single horsepower ever sold. By 1890, just 3 years later, Tesla was already a millionaire. Analysts said he was on track to become the world's first billionaire. But Edison wasn't going to watch his empire collapse quietly. What he did next is one of the darkest and least discussed chapters in American business history. He launched a public fear campaign against AC electricity. He gathered crowds and journalists and publicly electrocuted animals, cats, dogs, and at one demonstration, a full-grown elephant named Topsy, using AC current, all to convince people that Tesla's electricity was lethal. It was psychological warfare, and it was working. Tesla's response was extraordinary. He sat in front of a live audience, took hold of live AC cables, and passed the electricity through his own body. He stood there, unharmed, and calmly told the crowd they had nothing to fear. The war of currents raged for years. But then came two events that ended it permanently. The 1893 World's Fair in Chicago. The organizers needed electricity to power the entire exhibition. Tesla's bid came in at nearly half the price of Edison's. They chose Tesla. On opening night, 200,000 light bulbs came on simultaneously, powered entirely by AC. The crowd fell silent, then erupted. And then Niagara Falls. A coalition of industrialists wanted to transmit electricity from the falls to the city of Buffalo, 40 kilometers away. Edison's engineers said it was impossible. Tesla built it in 1895. Electricity from a waterfall carried 40 kilometers, lighting up an entire city. The war of currents was over. Tesla had won, but winning cost him everything. To fight Edison, Westinghouse had been bleeding money for years. Legal battles, massive loans. The company was teetering on collapse. So Westinghouse sat down with Tesla and said, if the royalty payments continue, the company won't survive. And if the company doesn't survive, Edison wins. Everything you built dies with us. Tesla reached across the table and tore up the royalty agreement, the one that was going to make him a billionaire. Tesla didn't see money the way most people do. He once said, money does not represent such a value as men have placed upon it. All my money has been invested into experiments, through which I have made discoveries that have made human life a little easier. That was not a quote for a speech. That was how he lived. 20-hour workdays. No marriage. No financial advisor. No legal counsel. He believed, with total sincerity, that his purpose was not to accumulate wealth but to serve humanity. And that belief, as pure as it was, became the first weapon used to destroy him. Because the world of money and power does not reward noble intentions. It rewards leverage. And Tesla had just given his away. This was the first assassination, the economic one. But this is where the story gets darker. Because Tesla was already working on something that dwarfed everything he had built before. Something that, if completed, would have changed the structure of human civilization. He called it the Wardenclyffe Tower. Tesla's vision was almost incomprehensible for its time. A global network of towers that could transmit electricity and information wirelessly to every human being on the planet. For free. No wires. No meters. No bills. Clean, unlimited electricity available to anyone, anywhere on Earth. The way sunlight is available to anyone standing outside. To build it, he needed serious money. And the most powerful financier in America was J.P. Morgan, a man who had built an empire in oil, coal, gas, and electricity. Tesla went to him, but he made a calculated decision not to tell Morgan the whole truth. He knew that free electricity for everyone would get the door slammed in his face. So he pitched it as a wireless communication project, a competitor to Marconi. Morgan trusted Tesla's track record and gave him $150,000. Construction began, but that only got the foundations built. Tesla needed more. So he went back, and this time, he told Morgan everything. The free electricity, the global network, the end of energy bills for the human race. Morgan listened, and then asked one question. If the electricity is free and wireless, where do you put the meter? Tesla said there would be no meter, and the temperature in the room dropped. Morgan wasn't looking at a man with a strange idea. He was looking at a man who wanted to personally dismantle everything Morgan had spent his life building. Free electricity didn't just compete with his investments. It obliterated them. Morgan pulled the funding. Then he did something that sealed Tesla's fate. He personally contacted every major investor in America and told them not to fund Tesla. Not the tower. Not any of his projects. Not anything. In a single afternoon, Nikola Tesla was completely blacklisted from American capital. Without money, a scientist cannot build, cannot experiment, cannot dream out loud. The Wardenclyffe Tower stood unfinished for years before being torn down and sold as scrap metal to pay off his debts. The man who dreamed of giving the world free energy ended up in a hotel room he couldn't afford, rent quietly paid by a former business partner out of something resembling pity. Now, the mystery box before moving to the Hotel New Yorker, Tesla had been staying at the Hotel Governor Clinton with an unpaid bill he couldn't settle. So he gave the hotel owner a locked box as collateral. He said inside was something called the death ray, a weapon capable of destroying 10,000 aircraft from 400 kilometers away, worth millions. He warned the owner, never open it, and never let it fall into the wrong hands. The owner believed him. Tesla's name alone carried that weight. When Tesla died in 1943 and the FBI moved in, they seized everything, including that box. The man assigned to open it was a physicist named John Trump, Donald Trump's uncle. Trump opened the box in front of officials and press. Inside was a 45-year-old resistor, a basic electrical component worth a few cents. The government seized on this immediately. John Trump declared Tesla's documents contained nothing of scientific value. The death ray was a fantasy, nothing to worry about. Everyone go home. Except, in 1984, the Tesla Museum in Belgrade discovered a technical document in its own archives titled The New Art of Projecting Concentrated Non-Dispersive Energy Through Natural Media. Detailed scientific specifications for a particle beam weapon, the kind the government had spent decades saying didn't exist. And John Trump himself, the man who called Tesla's work worthless, privately acknowledged in 1980 that Tesla had written letters to the Soviet government describing a secret weapon that was, in his own words, far ahead of the technology of its time. In 1980, Reagan launched the Star Wars Defense Initiative. Multiple analysts noted its core technology aligned almost exactly with what Tesla had described. In 2014, Israeli defense company Rafael unveiled Iron Beam, a directed energy weapon. Several independent experts called it a working version of Tesla's death ray. After Tesla died, his family spent years requesting the return of his seized belongings. In 1952, the government returned some of what they had taken, 7 trunks out of 80. Marconi was credited with inventing the radio and awarded the Nobel Prize, despite the U.S. Supreme Court ruling in 1943 that Marconi's patents were invalid because Tesla had filed the same ideas years earlier. That ruling sits in a courthouse somewhere. It didn't make the textbooks. Toward the end of his life, the present is theirs, but the future is mine. He said it as defiance, as faith that history would eventually correct itself. We are living in that future now. The Wi-Fi carrying this video to your screen, the AC power running through your walls, the wireless technology in your pocket, all of it built on foundations he laid. And yet most people couldn't tell you his name without prompting. Maybe that's the 4th assassination, the one that's still happening, the one that ends only when enough people decide to remember. The present is theirs, but the future? The future was always his.